Team, I got some knots for you that you may not have known. I've been building shelters for many moons now, and although I know about 30 to 40 knots, lashes, and hitches, I keep going back to using the same ones that I'm going to show you in this video. I'm looking forward to your thoughts and your comments down below as we continue to master our craft and develop our tactical virtue. What was your favorite knot, and which one do you turn and trust all the time? You've made your journey through the woods and you finally found the spot that looks just right, and you're ready to set up camp for a night or two. Odds are when you go to set up your shelter, you're going to rely on a ridge line of some form or fashion. And so the first knot that we'll look at tying is an end of the line bowline. Bowlines are an old but proven way of tying a loop that we can use to trust for any number of purposes. To tie a bowline, take that running in and pull out about 8 or 9 inches and then make an overhand loop. Then take that running in and run it up through the loop and then around the standing end and then back down through the loop. Dress it up nice and tight and your line is good to go. You may have heard it of after you're making that overhand loop of the rabbit comes up out of the hole, goes around the tree, and then back down through the hole. It's an easy way to remember how to tie this one. And once we have that secured, we can take our line and run it around a tree, and then take a portion of the standing end through the bowline and in place a wooden peg. Now we can tighten this up and our ridge line is secure on this side. You can't always make things perfect each and every single time. Every situation is going to be different. So in this case, our line is too short, and so we need to use a knot that is going to extend our cordage. In this case, we're going to tie a simple square knot. A square knot is a super simple knot to tie. Simply tie 2 overhand knots, right over left and then left over right. You'll know that you have a proper square knot when it's symmetrical and both of the running ends are on the same side. The problem with a square knot is that if the running end of one side and the standing end of another are pulled, it will cause our knot to fail. So we can use a simple half hitch to secure that square knot. Of course, half hitches can be used to secure any knot that you tie. It's going to help ensure that your knot is not going to come undone or lose its integrity. Simply make a turn and then take the running end and run it down through the loop that you created. Now we can finish up running our ridge line, and so in this case we're going to use another knot which is called a marlin spike hitch, although it's repurposed a little bit for the purpose of this ridge line. To make the marlin spike hitch, we're going to make an underhand loop and then place that loop on top of the running end and then pull the running end through the loop. Now we have a knot that we can rely on to move on to the next one that we're going to need to finish our ridge line. In this case, we're going to use a simple slip knot. Most of the time when we make a slip knot or a trucker's hitch, we run our running in through that marlin spike hitch one time and we'll crank down on it, but of course once you release any tension, we lose all of the advantage of the tightness on the rope. So one of the things that we can do is to take the running in and loop it twice through the marlin spike hitch. Now when we go to pull it, we can release the running in and that tension will remain in place. That will give you time so that you don't have to worry about pinching anything or losing any of the tension that you wanted. So again, we take that running in and we run it through the marlin spike hitch, not once but twice. And now we pull it nice and tight as we want to, and that gives us time to maybe look down and pick up a peg that we want to use, and then we Finish the slip knot off, and now when we're all done, we simply remove the peg, and to release the tension, we're going to take the running end and pull it towards the standing end. And now that our ridgeline is up, we can go ahead and get a simple A-frame set into place. Another common knot that I use is called the taut line, and this is great to be able to add tension onto a line, especially if it's connected to a stake and we want to be able to draw some tension on it. So after we get our shelter put into place, in this case I'm setting up a freestanding plow point. In this case, you'll notice that the line that I'm using here has an end of the line bowline in it already. And so now I can run it through the tie-outs of my shelter, place a wooden peg in to keep it secure, and now I can raise my walking stick. If you didn't have a walking stick, you could use a trekking pole, or you can even tie this to a tree, but in this case it is freestanding. But now that I have my walking stick erected, I need to figure out a way to get some good tension on this line in order to keep the shelter secure, especially in times of high wind. So I'm going to turn to using a taut line. A taut line is a very simple knot to tie. I'm going to bring my running end up, and I'm going to make 2 turns on the inside and then 1 turn on the outside, pulling it through the loop that is created. Once we have this completed, I can simply run the taut line up and put as much tension on it as I want, and it will not slide back down the line. Again, take the running end and pinch it to the standing end and make 2 turns on the inside, and then make 1 turn on the outside from where we started and pull the running end through the loop that we created. Draw it up nice and tight, and she's good to go. Certainly one of the easiest knots to make is the overhand knot, but if we utilize a little bit of ingenuity in what we're thinking, we can turn an overhand knot into something that is incredible. In this case, I'm setting up a jungle loop or a jungle ridge line, which is a series of overhand knots just tied in a row. And with about 4 or 5 inches in between, this makes a completely awesome and super versatile ridgeline system that can be used for any number of configurations. And what we end up with in between the overhand knots is just a small section, and as it turns out, the more tension that is drawn away from the knots, the more secure it can be. So what are we going to do with this? We're going to bring our ridge line around our tree and take one of those overhand knots and place it through the loop that we created. That's it. It's all locked in place. And the tighter and more tension that we have on our line, the more secure this system is. And so we go and run around to our other tree and do the exact same thing. We get it drawn up as tight as we want, super adjustable, and we just place the overhand knot through that jungle loop. And the beautiful thing about the jungle loop is it's super easy to undo. This is probably the fastest ridge line to set up and take down in the world. And so in this case, I'm going to make a simple lean-to shelter. I'm going to take one of those tie-outs and bring it up in between 2 of the knots and place a wooden peg in through the tie-out. And it's going to keep it secure, and it can't move left or right because those knots serve as stopper knots. I get the other side put into place in the exact same way, and now I can go to stake out my corners. Easy peasy. Now, if you're a fan of using a standard ridgeline, as am I, it may come in handy to be able to have a couple of adjustable pieces of cordage that we can use to help draw some tension on our tarp system. So the first knot that we need to tie, in this case, is called the fisherman's knot. Again, this is utilizing an overhand knot. That's all that we're doing. And so we're going to take the running end from one side and make an overhand knot around the standing end. And then I'm going to take the piece, I'm going to flip it about and do the exact same thing. Make an overhand knot, ensuring that I go around the standing end. Once it's complete, I can draw up tension, and now I have a simple loop. Now, for the next knot, which is the prusik, we need to understand that a prusik is basically a multiple lark's head. A lark's head is a super simple knot that can be used for any number of purposes. And so all we have to do to make a simple lark's head is place the cordage out in front of us and then just kind of rotate our wrist towards each other until we have this loop that's created. That's a way. There are many ways to make this one. Now I want to take that section that we made using that fisherman's knot and I want to secure it to my ridge line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to place it on the back side of my ridge line, bring it down through itself around the ridge line and then back down through the loop that we created. And now we've just made a simple prusik. And the good thing about this is we can slide it around, but if it's pulled intentionally down the line by itself, it will not move. So it's great to be able to draw tension on a shelter. And to get it unsecured if we ever needed to, we simply pull on it and it all comes off. So we'll start this on the far side of the ridge line. And I'm simply going to take a bite and bring it back down through itself. And that made a simple lark's head. To make the prusik, we're going to bring that bite around the ridge line again and back down through that same loop that we created. Now we have a prusik. I can continue and make as many loops and turns as I want to, and simply making sure that we get it all nice and dressed up. I would submit to you that the more difference that there is in diameter between the cordage that you're trying to use, the more turns that you're going to want, because the more turns that you have, the more friction that is created, and so the more tension that it can withstand. Just a fantastic knot. Not only can you use it for securing a tarp onto a ridge line, but you can use it as a hanger as well. And now we're ready to go. And so in this case, I'm going to use some simple bank line to make this setup. And once it's secured, I'm going to run it through a tie out on my tarp and then use a peg to keep it secure. Once the peg's in place, all I have to do is simply move that prusik to where I want it to begin and rinse and repeat the exact same process, getting that prusik put into place, get a peg put in, and now I can get it nice and secure. In this case, we're making an elevated A-frame, and so I'm going to use a short piece of cordage with an end-of-the-line bowline on both sides, using a wooden peg on one side and simply staking down on the other. And now I have a tarp that is tall enough that I can walk underneath, and this is a great option to make a shelter over a cooking area, for example. Hey man, I appreciate you guys. If you enjoyed the content of this one, you already know what to do. Smash all them things. I know that you know this, but I appreciate you guys. So until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked. Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.